When we think about crime in the city, I heard Eric Adams say that he wants to arm off-duty police officers. We've invited Mr. Adams on the show. I hope he comes on. I got to be honest, I was a bit mortified by that. I think studies have shown that off-duty police officers do not make Black and brown communities safer. I want to know your thoughts on arming off-duty police officers and how we can really tackle in a healthy, realistic way crime in our communities.
Well, Clay, look, Eric Adams went farther than that. He didn't just say off-duty police officer. He said as mayor, he would carry a gun himself as a former police officer. And we need a mayor who is setting the right example for New Yorkers. Look, I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I'm also the father of 22 and 19-year-old boys. And frankly, one of the things that outrages me is as kids from a white family, they've never been subjected to the same treatment or the same fears about policing that so many kids of color have. And I, as a dad, the example that he would be setting as mayor, this is the most important election of our lifetimes in New York City. This is a moment, as President Obama used to say, where we shouldn't let a crisis go to waste. There is an opportunity for real reform in our criminal justice system. And we can't have a mayor who's going to set an example that they would carry a gun and encourage more New Yorkers to carry guns. We need to do two big things, Clay. First, we got to get the guns off of our streets. And we got to recognize we're not making them here in New York City. We're not selling them at stores on our streets. They are coming in from rogue gun dealers out of state. And one of the things that's unusual about me as a candidate in this race, I have deep relationships. Having worked with President Obama for 8 years, I know all of the law enforcement agencies, the folks leading them in Washington, D.C. I have deep relationships with mayors and governors around the region and around the country. I could form a powerful coalition to go after rogue gun dealers in Pennsylvania, in Maryland, and other states to stop the flow of illegal guns. But the last thing I want to say, Clay, is we have an epidemic of mental health that's playing out on our streets, on our subways, in our shelters. The number of individuals sleeping on our streets and in shelter has doubled under Mayor de Blasio. When I was housing commissioner, we brought it down by 1/3. And we did that by really treating the underlying symptoms of mental health that's leading to growing violence and crime in our city. And so I would do that by investing in what's called supportive housing, not this terrible shelter system, which people are afraid to go to. We need to make sure that we're actually housing those, just as I did for folks coming out of Rikers, with permanent housing that has the mental health services, the substance abuse services on site to really break the cycle of violence and hopelessness in our city.
I got to tell you, a mayor carrying a gun, that just sounds like something
Crazy,
I would hear
right?
from a Southern conservative. That just blows me away. Housing, this is a big issue for me. I think it is criminal, the kind of rent that New Yorkers pay. You know, when we talk, I mean, as a kid who was homeless, it wasn't always about mental health issues. It was that, although I wasn't in New York at the time when I was a kid, but my mother couldn't afford good housing. Is there anything that can, I mean, I've had this vision, I know it probably would never happen, of there should be a cap that you can charge per square footage, square footage for an apartment. $3,000 for a 1-bedroom. This is insanity. You as mayor, what would you do if the rent is too high, as they say?
Damn high, as they say.
Yes.
Exactly right. Look, Clay, this is exactly right. As a kid growing up in the city, I saw homelessness exploding on our streets. I saw people being put out of housing in the South Bronx and Central Brooklyn. We need to make sure, as I've tried to do for 30 years in my career, that we invest in more affordable housing. Here's the thing. 3 things. First, we need to make sure at the moment when we're on the verge of the worst eviction crisis of our lifetimes in this city, we got to keep folks in their homes. And the way that we do that, billions of dollars of rental assistance that Congress has recently passed, we need a mayor who understands how to work with local community-based organizations, reach those families that are on the verge of eviction, get them that money quickly, and also get them legal services, housing counseling, because so often they're being evicted in court without even a lawyer. So that's one thing, keep people in their homes. Second, We got to preserve the affordable housing we have. I don't know if you know this, Clay. More people live in public housing in New York City than live in Atlanta, Georgia. It is the most precious resource we have for truly affordable housing. I have a plan to get $40 billion of investment to fix it up, to preserve it permanently as public housing. Third, we got to build more affordable housing. My plan would allow us to build 30,000 more units a year of truly affordable housing. And no one else in this race has the ability to go to Washington, partner with Secretary Marcia Fudge, and really make sure that we're getting all of the dollars we need to bring the rent down. Nobody should pay more than a third of what they earn in this city. That's the right standard. And I could achieve that as mayor. Those are all things that I would do to make sure we could finally have affordable, truly affordable housing in this city.
Mr. Donovan, let me ask you this. And before I say this, I want to say, just because somebody is Black or African American does not mean that they're going to be on your side. Look at Clarence Thomas. But there are some people that I've heard say, you know what, although we have Mayor Dinkins, that it is time for a Black mayor or a Latin mayor of New York. It is time for a Black woman to be mayor of New York, or a Latin woman to be mayor of New York. You as a white guy who's in this race, what do you say to Black and brown voters who say, you know what, it's time to have more than just one Black mayor of this great city?
Well, look, I've been out on the streets all around this city for the past 18 months talking about what New Yorkers are looking for to recover not just from the COVID crisis, but the pre-existing pandemic of inequality that we had in this city. And Clay, here's what I would say. You can't say you're progressive on these issues unless you've actually made progress on racial equity and inequality. And if you look at all of the folks in this race, at their records on actually making change, I would say I could do more for this city at a scale than other candidates to really advance racial equity. Why do I say that? Well, look at the record. When I was housing secretary, I led the way on giving real meaning to the Fair Housing Act of 1968. I don't know if you remember when Donald Trump still had a Twitter account, he was saying Joe Biden was trying to destroy the suburbs by making sure that people could live wherever they choose. That was my work as housing secretary, to advance the idea that every American, every New Yorker, no matter what color their skin, where they come from, what language they speak, who they love, can live wherever they choose. And in fact, when Joe Biden went to Tulsa last week to commemorate the Tulsa race riot, the massacre there, and to lay out his plan for racial equity, he put my work as HUD secretary at the center of that. And so I really believe that if you look past the cover of the book to what's in that book, to look at who's really made progress on these issues, I would suggest that New Yorkers, particularly Black and brown New Yorkers, should trust that I will make progress on these issues exactly as I've done as HUD secretary in President Obama's cabinet for 8 years, but over a 30-year career.
Before you go, I just want to ask you a couple of national questions. And I know you're not running for senator or anything like that, but in my mind, I do think that the mayor of New York really is a national job. Where do you stand on qualified immunity?
So I've been clear that we're not going to make progress on police accountability unless we end the practice of qualified immunity.
Where do you stand on the filibuster?
So I have to say, it is time to let the majority in Senate and in this country rule. I think we've got to make change in the filibuster.
Critical race theory, it's hit some private schools in New York. Parents have been pushing back against that. There's been bans all over the country to stop critical race. I just call it Black history, but whatever. But where do you stand on this critical race theory debate?
Clay, Black history is my history. It's all of our history in this city, in this country. We've got to teach it.
Okay. Before you go, last question. I've interviewed a lot of candidates over the years, and I know people are disenchanted. Everything that's being put out there, it's just proposals. It's just ideas. It's not going to happen until somebody gets in office. What do you say to people who are just deeply, deeply disenchanted, and versus voting for the other side, they're just not going to vote at all because they just don't believe in our politicians right now? What do you say to them, Mr. Donovan?
Well, Clay, what I say is don't lose faith. Don't lose hope. Change is possible. And let me be very personal here. 30 years ago this week, I sat down to have dinner with John Lewis and then set off retracing the route of the Freedom Rides. And that was the 30th anniversary then. That's 60 years ago this week. Think about what those Freedom Riders faced, beaten in the streets. And Clay, let me just maybe embarrass you a little bit here. You have been a leader on these issues, but also on LGBTQ issues. And
Thank you.
I was the very first cabinet secretary in history to endorse marriage equality. That wasn't that many years ago. Think about the progress that we have made on being able to marry who you love in this country. Change is possible with the right leadership. We should not lose hope. And President Obama used to say all the time, we cannot let a crisis go to waste. It is in these dark moments, these moments when we still have hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers out of work, when we've lost more than 30,000 of our neighbors in New York. These are the moments when we can all come together, become New York, one New York, and move this city forward. But it's going to take every one of us. It's going to take a mayor for all New Yorkers, and it's going to take real leadership at moments like this. And so, Clay, your activism, your speaking up has made a difference. Every New Yorker, every American could do that. That's why I'm in this race, because I've spent my life in public service trying to make communities more affordable, to build communities that provide opportunity to everyone. That's what I want to do as mayor. And that kind of change is possible if we don't lose hope, if we come together and vote. Voting starts this Saturday in New York. June 22nd is not far away. Do not lose hope, New Yorkers and Americans. Change is possible.
Well, I do want to say we reached out to everybody and we have plenty of other candidates coming on, but your team, you were the first to say yes. So I just want to say that. That's really important.
Well,
thank you once again. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm a big fan. And as I said a moment ago, thank you, Clay, for speaking up, for your activism. You talked about being homeless as a kid. Last week, I talked about this. One of the most profound things I saw when I started volunteering in a homeless shelter in college, in my work around homelessness, our LGBTQ youth make up less than 10% of New Yorkers. They're 40% of our homeless. And we need to make sure that the invisible in our society, those that we've discriminated against for too long, whether it's for the color of their skin or who they love, we need to make change in this city. You have been a leader on that, and I deeply want to thank you.
Thank you. And to that point, the majority of our LGBTQ homeless kids, they're Black and brown LGBTQ homeless kids.
Absolutely.
So there's an important intersection there. I want to thank you once again for coming on. Thank you once again. You can go to Shaun, that's SHAUN, for NYC, FORNYC.com for more information. I wish you the best of luck, sir. Thank you for coming on the Clay Cane Show.
Love being here, Clay. Thank you.